Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Startup Voyage podcast. I'm your host, Arthur Lee, and today we're going to be talking about being the most productive Web3 entrepreneur. So, what are we going to talk about around that? Well, essentially, it's not just me. I've got a very special guest. There's this guy that I met on Facebook, and I kept on seeing his posts, and he had a lot of great inspirational posts, including some really great tips on increasing your productivity. But of course, knowing how I am, I don't know about you, but the discipline to actually take action every single day is the only way that you actually be productive, right? So I brought him on board because I thought, hey, let's talk about how do you help your clients? And some of the topics we talk about are around the hustle culture in the startup entrepreneur space and whether or not that is the right mentality to have. How do you invest your time in the mindset that you need for not only for yourself, but for your employees to create a very productive team? And then some of the things to create operational structures to really fully leverage your own time and your team's time, thus increasing productivity. So this guy, his name is Michael Yeung, and he is the founder of Elite Productivity. Now, he's been on his own, helping a lot of different clients as a productivity expert, business coach, and he's done his fair share of working 100-hour weeks in the past. It's not the type of person who read some books and he's going out there coaching. He actually lived and breathed a lifestyle that we all want to avoid, especially as business owners working, 50-hour weeks and plus, right? So anyways, hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot from Michael Yeung. Hey, welcome to the Startup Voyage. And in this podcast, we talk about helping entrepreneurs optimize their time so they can maximize their profits. And so what this includes, as far as topics, the hustle culture in the startup entrepreneur space. And we'll also cover investing time with the mindset of working as an employee versus the mindset of actually being a visionary leader, and then creating operational structures to leverage your time. So I'm your host, Arthur Lee, and joining us today is Michael Yeung, founder of Elite Productivity. Now, he's an expert in the productivity space, a business coach, founder of Elite Productivity, and having his fair share of 100 work weeks, which I've also had myself, where we basically were crippled with burnouts. And Michael has discovered and validated a different approach to productivity, building a life and business he's wildly proud of and mastering what it means to have full autonomy. Now, with the mission to help entrepreneurs masterfully invest their time for maximal profit, freedom, and fulfillment, Michael has the privilege to work with clients across 14 different countries and countless industries, helping them surpass their ambitious goals in business while reclaiming the time freedom they deserve. So welcome to the podcast, Michael. It's really good to have you with us. And I'm for sure, our target audience is basically tech entrepreneurs, specifically in the Web3 space. And I'm sure you've covered 14 different industries. Tell me about some of these industries that you've covered. People from all
Sure.
walks of life. Yeah.
Happy to do so. And first off, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So, like e-com, e-com brands, SaaS companies, consultancies, agency owners, coaches, course creators, info businesses. These are a few, but the main thing that I believe allowed me to position myself in the market uniquely is how I've been exposed to companies who are based in different cultures and different countries. Like for me, I'm based in Hong Kong right now. I lived in the UK for 8 years, but I have cousins in the US, so I'm like traveling all around the world all the time. So
Mm.
yeah, multiple countries, multiple industries, and I'm just an open book.
Well, that's here the reason why I brought you on board is for sure technology has made the barrier to entry into building a business much lower than ever before. So many new entrepreneurs coming out, but for sure don't have the right mindset, the right skills to actually operate and succeed, and therefore still the status remains more than 90% of startups fail. So tell me about, I'm very curious. So, I mean, I worked a lot in the past, building my own business, and also working in a company in which, I just had a fixed salary. Tell me a little bit about your story, because I'm very curious. You worked a lot of hours in the past, and what was that? What, explain the pain and then the turning point where you decided I gotta leave.
Sure. So first off, just for some quick context, I grew up not like typical entrepreneurs. I actually only discovered entrepreneurship during the third year of my college degree. And I
Hmm.
actually studied to become a veterinary surgeon. I love animals. I still love animals. But after I discovered entrepreneurship, reading books like Think and Grow Rich, Rich and Poor Dad, I'm like, wait, so I can actually make a much greater impact and have the freedom that I want without having to stay in an animal clinic for 50 hours per week for the next 30 years of my life. And I'm like, I'm in. So back then I was still juggling between what my parents wanted me to do and what I thought I can do versus what I actually wanted to do, like really, really want to do it and my purpose. I started to juggle between doing work placements in my job, studying, building an e-com brand, running a basketball team, all at the same time. I was making good money, decent money, but I was so burnt out.
Hmm.
100-hour work weeks, no life, no social life, skipping the work, even skipping the gym at one point. And it reached a point where the tipping point happened when I was driving down a highway one summer afternoon in the UK and dozing off on the M25 highway
Hmm.
going like 70 miles per hour. And when I woke up, I was like, I found my car just lying on the on, like on the side lane, and luckily no one was hurt. I didn't collide with any car, and I was like, wait, I just like that was a wake up point that hit me like a truck, and
Wow.
that was when I realized I became the textbook definition of an entrepreneur who sacrificed everything for quote unquote success.
Hmm.
And that led me down the rabbit hole of productivity, leverage, creating systems, working smart, not working hard, and committing myself to take this as a second chance in life and really build a life for myself and for the people I want to impact instead of sacrificing my well-being, relationship, and possibly even
Hmm.
my life for what the society thinks is
Hmm.
successful.
Okay. Okay. Well, I actually didn't know that background story. That's a huge turning point for you. I think for most people, at least the people in my circles, they work hard. They can put on a lot of hours. I've got a lot of friends who are attorneys, and the idea is that they would earn enough so they can potentially one day move into doing their own business and become an entrepreneur. Although some of them are a little bit afraid to escape that world because they've worked really hard for some really solid salary, right? And
Yeah,
it doesn't become an option anymore. So I guess with your case, when you work with your clients themselves, um, I mean, there must be lots of different people deciding at different points in their career as far as when to jump. Now, when you first meet them, like what is their mindset like? What do they think? Is it? I guess you can imagine a lot of people think this is a dream, right? I can do whatever I want, freedom of time, but they also got to make money. So, what is your experience with a lot of these entrepreneurs? Are they, how is their condition when you first meet them?
sure. So I treat an entrepreneur's productivity differently. I don't really teach the typical like time blocking habits and how to work faster type of things. If you think that I sell journals to people or sell task management templates to people, then I'm sorry, you'll be very disappointed. What I do is to help people shift from a linear approach to productivity to a more exponential approach to productivity. So clients come to me because they feel stuck. They're working 60, 70, 80 hours per week but they still feel like no matter how hard they push, they keep on hitting that plateau, that glass ceiling, because they can only do so much
Mm.
as one person. And we have to shift their mindset into thinking that working hard does not equal being more productive. What you've got to do here is to shift your relationship with time and how you manage yourself in relation to your time that you have, so that the value and the output of your time can flex. So whilst we cannot manage time, the metric that we scale with clients is return on time invested. And ironically, that does not equal doing more. Most of the time, it involves us doing less. And elimination is the first step that we normally dive deep with clients so that they can actually create the what I call startup capital for
Mm.
the life that they want to build in the form of free time to think and energy and headspace to actually make better
Mm.
decisions.
Right, right. Well, I do believe for sure we all have limited amount of energy every single day, and we must focus it obviously on the things that have high value. These days in the startup world, it's very much a thinking of we need to hustle, whether it be a small team or a big team. I've seen companies hire employees and be very happy just because they are busy, busy doing something, right? But I mean, for sure, the reality is the output and what's actually being created in the value or the impact to the business sometimes it's just not there. So when you've got leaders that sometimes are very focused on the mindset of we're the guys with a vision, we see how we're going to execute this plan, and sometimes they probably get frustrated as far as like not being able to delegate or maybe find alignment with their own employees. I mean, this is what I hear as a common problem. That's why they might have reasons of this is why I don't have time. I just haven't found the right person to help us out. How do you deal with those type of situations?
So I would say delegation comes down to different kinds. To be fair, I like to view
Mm.
it in three layers. Number one, there's delegating non-skilled labor. The second layer is delegating skilled labor. And number three, delegating decision makers who are your C suite and executives. So
Mm.
the way they delegate at different levels requires a different strategy, a different approach. But we can go a little bit high level here. And one
Mm.
thing that at least what me and my clients like to use is to actually prioritize attitude and competence over experience. Because if our culture, like if our values don't align, if your values do not align with the company culture, or if you're the type of person who's really good at your job, but I don't really see myself hang out with you at dinner, as in your presence does not light me up, it's not going to work. It's not going to work.
Right,
That's the first
right.
thing, which is a little bit ethereal, is not too tactical. And the but then let's talk about the technical side. The technical side is that what I see a lot of star entrepreneurs or just business owners in general make is that they try to outsource every bit of micro action.
Mm.
But what actually allows outsourcing to be done the right way is for us to outsource the outcome. What are the KPIs that we need to hit? What does done look like in a project? Not like it's not done does not look like I just checked everything out of the box. Done
Mm.
looks like this is achieved at this quality with these KPIs hit. And there's the last part. You have to let go and let your team do their work. Sometimes your team, like how your team hits their KPIs, might be through a strategy or through a method that's far more effective than what you wanted them to, like compared to the part, like compared to the path that you wanted to take. So you've got to make a choice. Are you here to just outsource labor and outsource your brain? or do you want your team to actually achieve an outcome for you in a way that they think is most effective?
Hmm. That's a very good point. I think if we just put it in as example, so people can maybe put it into context, right? So, um, I've always been in sales and marketing. I would talk to a company and ask, okay, how are you set up with marketing? And most of the time, like, oh, we're good. So I'm like, what's your strategy? What do you have? Who do you have working on what? They hire some low level person, maybe some interns, and they're doing social media, right? They're doing a certain amount of posts, and they feel good about it. But then I asked them, I said, well, what is the outcome for those posts? Oh, we're trying to get visibility. And I said, okay, well, how do you know that you're getting visibility? What does that mean? What are the KPIs? And when you drill down on it, I think many times they don't even know themselves. So I guess to your point, sometimes it's not even just the team, but it's just the people that you acquire that understands how to drive that outcome is what I'm hearing. So it's one thing to be, like you said, to be a laborer and says, okay, just tell me what to do. And they might have some autonomy to figure out, but maybe they're not sure. They just try different things and they work in autonomy, meaning they don't have much help. So I guess for sure, being outcome based is should be like the focus. Is that what you're telling your clients? So everything they're looking at when you're saying managing their time, are they managing the time to then, I guess, prioritize those levels of high valued items and figure out, maybe that's all they spend their time on. Is that right?
It really depends on the classic situation, to be fair,
Mm,
because yes, theoretically, you can just outsource everything else and just focus on high value activities or just build a
mm,
business. Every business like this, every single business owner streams. I just want a self-managing team. They can just do their job, and I can just be in my zone of genius. I can just be the chief visionary officer and just do what I love, and everything else will be taken care of by my team. Well, that rarely happens when you are building a business and when
mm,
the business is in this scaling, chaotic phase of, yeah, just this chaotic phase of scaling. So, what I once, like, what I normally advise my class to do is to block off time for obviously building on the business, and number two, building in the business.
mm.
At the end of the day, unless your chain of command is purely decentralized from you, you'll still have to be in the weeds of your business.
Mm.
But you can use what I call the 10-80-10 rule. You start the task, you start the project, you assign the KPIs, you assign the outcomes, your team executes the 80% for you, and then you go ahead and do the finishing touches. That's the
Uh,
remaining 10%. And that alleviates so much pressure off my class's shoulders.
mhm. I think that's a great point. I've seen a lot of leaders in startups in which even the CEO is too much in the business rather than being on the outside. Just doing what he needs to do, right, as a visionary leader. And it even gets to the point too much operational, I guess, efficiencies they're trying to create in the business, and they kind of forget about their actual job as a CEO.
Mhm.
Okay, that's good. Well, I mean, so for most of your clients coming to you, I know there's for sure anyone starting a business who maybe have not done it before, or they're coming from like a full time position. The mindset usually is like you're working for the man, some company, and you've got your KPIs yourself. Someone else is driving or defining that for you, but obviously, when you are starting a business, your mindset has to be completely different. How do you assess your clients coming in whether or not they've got the right mindset to be entrepreneurs, and if they don't have the right mindset, how do you move them forward?
One of the first questions that I have to answer for myself is this: is my client measuring productivity in the form of how many hours they put in, or are they measuring their productivity in terms of what is the outcome
Hmm.
that I've actually achieved, either for me or my clients? Because if you are in a typical 9 to 5 job, you'll get paid what? You'll get paid by the amount of time they invest into the business or the company that you work for. But if you are an entrepreneur, you're here to pay, you're here to solve problems, and you're here to get paid by the outcomes that you provide for your company and your people. So this is a shift in mindset that causes people to, causes entrepreneurs who still have an employee mindset to stay stuck, because they always feel like, hey, if I am working hard enough, I will eventually hit my goals. And if I'm working hard but still fall short of my goals, that means I can work even harder and it will
Hmm.
finally actualize. That's not the case 90% of the time. And what and that leads me to the second area that I want to talk about, which is how you make decisions. When you are an employee, you just get handed the objective and you will just execute. You're always in the business. But if you are the owner of your business, work doesn't involve just dive into the weeds every single day. You've got to be able to think, you've got to be able to strategize, you've got to be able to ideate. But then most people think that, hey, if like I don't have time for that, I have to post on Facebook, I have to build this landing page, I have to dance on TikTok, I have to add captions on my Instagram reels, and I don't have time to think. I'm like,
Hmm.
that's why you're stuck in this employee mindset. You think that more work equals more outcome, but that's not the case.
Well, I guess is it fair to say, let's say, okay, when you're starting a business, and you may put a lot of hours because you're trying to produce an outcome, you don't know how to get there, so you're trying to figure things out. Trying to be resourceful. You go online, watch YouTube, you talk to some people, but when you start doing it, I guess maybe is it fair to say that capturing what you're doing, like creating a standard operating procedure, so then even though if you're the only person in your business, or if you've got one other person, at some point you can actually pass it on to someone else, right? So they can do that work. So I mean, I guess is that a smart tactic? So when people, because I mean, we all have to go through and figure things out,
Mhm.
and sometimes it will take us 100 hours to figure something out. I guess the question is every time I got to work on that same problem, am I always going to put in 100 hours, or can I figure out how to reduce it to 40? I guess, is that the mindset?
I think that's kind of, I would say partially that is,
Hmm.
but another thing is to develop and master the skill of time budgeting.
Okay.
It's not like we need to spend 100 hours per week in order for us to be productive. Obviously, every single business owner goes through the hustle phase where they have to hustle to pay rents, to kill with expenses so that their business can
Hmm.
self-sustain, and then they quit their job or finally be able to take a breather. I get that. But
Hmm.
when you're up there and when you're very established, they want to buy, like you've got to start buying back your time, or else you will just be the bottleneck of your business. So
Right.
when it comes to outsourcing, yes, you want to budget your time first and look at, okay, is what I am like, are these things possible to be accomplished in a week's time? A lot
Hmm.
of people, they try to cram 20 hours worth of work into a 2 hour time block. I wonder why they're not ending work on time. So the first step here is to recognize how much time a task actually takes.
Yeah.
And number two, when you're able to accomplish a task effectively to a point where it produces results, then build SOPs. Because what happens if you build SOPs for a process that isn't validated to produce progress in your business? You will be outsourcing and scaling up what is ineffective.
Hmm.
And what does that lead to? Fires expenses, and more stress.
Right, right. So would you then say, so you talk about buying back time, right? So for sure, the way to buy back time is obviously paying other people to do the stuff that allows you the space to be productive in other areas, like you said, to spend more time on analysis and you basically using your mind. That's how I say it, right? Really, putting the hard thinking, which most entrepreneurs, that's where they should spend a lot of time, focusing on to figure out how they're going to manage the business. So I mean, is that what I'm hearing then? Like, the first chance you get, let's say you start building a little bit of revenue, or you save up a little bit of revenue in which that you can hire even like a executive assistant, right? So a lot of people may think about an EA only later on when they've built other employees. People might say, oh well, we need a CTO first, or we need a salesperson because we need sales. I recognize that maybe startups may. I guess the point is, what do you think? I mean, there's always this probably thinking strategy. They don't. I mean, startups usually don't hire an HR person, right? I actually think they should hire an HR person from the start. You don't know how to build a team. You don't know who you're looking for, and a lot of mistakes are made. You're hiring the wrong people. I mean, do you face that often? Like working with your clients, and they just don't have the right
Yeah,
people around them. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
One of the biggest mistakes that I see with my clients who are looking to scale
yeah.
is them hiring in the wrong sequence. And going back to your points, I'm totally with you. I think every single entrepreneur should start with hiring a personal assistant, whether you call it a VA or an EA.
Mm, right.
Every single client that comes to like that I work with, if they don't have a VA, I literally go ahead and help them qualify, hire, onboard, and place a VA onto the team.
Mm,
Because every single time I see like when I audit a client schedule who does not have a VA, I see tasks such as check emails, reach out to people who engage with on social media, following over the pipeline, or tracking data, or managing the Facebook ads account and extracting data and organizing these stats. I'm like, yes, you can go ahead and outsource a salesperson, but you are literally paying yourself to do $10 per hour task that you can otherwise pay somebody else to do it for you.
right.
So
Yeah.
again, non-skilled labor must be the first layer that we delegate.
Mm,
Because what if you're maxed out and you try to outsource sales because you hate sales? Well, what if that person does not perform? What if you do not have time to train that salesperson? What if your systems and processes need work and need streamlining before
mm,
that salesperson can be on board and trained up smoothly? Your business will tank because you've just destroyed your sales process and you now have no revenue.
right. Well, what do you do with those? Okay, so I've had interviews and in discussions around the development of AI, the AI tools in which not that the fear of them replacing humans, which I think is almost like a Terminator type scenario. But the fact is, a lot of these tools, they increase your productivity. So I've talked to some founders of some startups who are saying, wow, this is amazing, these tools, I can do so much more. And yet even they say, okay, I can write a blog post, typically takes me 2 to 3 hours, I can now do it in 30 minutes. They feel quite proud about it, but then at the same time I'm thinking, why would you even spend 30 minutes on a blog post? But so I think there's always this balance of what tools can actually give you, and beyond of the productivity it can create for you. There should be a decision made that maybe you shouldn't be doing these, like, if very well put, these $10 an hour tasks, right? Do you face a lot of entrepreneurs that think this way, like, oh, that's all right, Michael, I can do a lot with these tools? Yeah,
Yes, confusing activity with productivity,
yeah.
that's a problem that we tackle all the time. And it can be solved easily by us first defining the objective before looking at tools or before
Mm,
looking at putting anything on our calendar. Because if we are doing things just for the sake of doing things, we will always end up with an endless to-do list. Same thing with AI. There are AI tools and softwares popping up here and there on a daily basis. It's impossible to keep up with them, like keep up with all of them, unless that's your full-time role. So
right.
this is something that's actually like, yeah, I might bring this guy who to your podcast as well. He is a genius with AI, and we are looking to collaborate in some form and try to create what we call AI powered VAs to just do
Mm,
everything that that should not be on our client's plates. And every single and he made a very valid point. Never ever just look for AI tools for the sake of looking for AI tools. Start with this. What is it that I want to streamline and accomplish with AI? And
mm.
then find a tool for that.
That's a perfect way to seeing it. Oh, I would love to talk to this guy. I see a lot of posts these days where they are trying to encourage people, obviously, to use more tools, but they're more like prompt engineers. And they're like, hey, here's 100 prompts that you can use to increase your productivity. And to your point, I'm looking at the full list. I'm like, okay, well, let's see, what am I trying to do? But they're very tactical, right? I'm like how to create a cold email content. I'm like, okay, that's not, exactly what I want specifically, right? But to
Yeah,
your point, so give me an example with any of your clients that you worked with, if you can share, maybe an example to put into some context. Like, what does that mean? Like, what do you mean by finding an objective? And how does that figuring that out help the person figure out how to move forward?
sure, sure. So I have a client who I've been working together with for 2.5 years now. And when she came to me, she's simply a very, very talented and experienced expert. And she wanted to, well, she was building two businesses. She was building a business, her own business as a financial advisor,
Hmm.
and she wanted to become a personal finance coach and thought leader as well, which is amazing. And what the work she does is absolutely amazing. But she's all over the place as the visionary. One day she wants to write a book. Next day she wants to hop on to YouTube. Next day she wants to go ahead and do speaking gigs. Next day she wants to start a Facebook group. And I'm like, okay, what is it that we actually want to achieve here? And she gave me a very simple question. She gave me a very simple answer. She's like, Michael, all I want to do is fill in 80 seats to my online challenge
Hmm.
and convert 7 to 10 clients to my group coaching offer. And I'm like, you know, given the timeline and the objective that you want to achieve in this quarter, 80% of what we're doing should not be on your plate right now. We are living in a entrepreneurial society where once in a lifetime opportunities are popping up on a weekly basis. And if we FOMO into that every single
Hmm.
time, we will spread ourselves thin. There are so many ways, infinite ways to achieve one single outcome. But if you try everything, you will not get anything done. What we've done is to restrip everything away and replace the trivial with just focusing on the vital. Okay, your
Hmm.
past 5 clients, where did they come from? What was their sales journey? And we figured out 80% of them came from her Facebook group. What happened next? We doubled down on that. And what happened next? She accomplished more by doing less.
Great, that's a great one for sure. I mean, I think that's a classic, right? When you talk about, reaching out to people finding clients, it's always about, okay, who's your ideal, who's your avatar, and usually it's like, where do they hang out online? Where do we find them, right? And I get that's essentially what you did. It's kind of like, the 101, right? This is foundation. And that's exactly what she did, which is great. I can only imagine. Then she just built her pipeline through that, maximizing, her group to the most potential that she can before she thinks about anything else. And she's probably, I can imagine she's probably quite busy already just with her Facebook group, huh?
Yeah, she's like back when we were starting working together, she's
Yeah.
waking up at the middle of the night because she's so stressed out because of all the things that she needs to do. And she's a mom. She's a mom of three.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, you cannot destroy yourself by just giving yourself so many things to do without an objective. There,
Right.
like if you look at the book Essentialism, I love that book. There's a diagram where you have two circles, and one circle has arrows pointing to different directions, and there's another circle with just one arrow, and that one arrow points towards one direction, and it goes way farther than any of the arrows in the second circle.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's the shift that we want to make. We want to go from doing more and spinning our wheels to doing less, by making that vital action very, very rewarding.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's a great case study. I guess if you talk about one of the things we want to cover today, it's just basically creating, I guess, operational structures that you can really like leverage your time. And you're seeing that, in this case, this is exactly what people need just as entrepreneurs. Can you talk more about that? Like maybe in a high level, like how do you manage that with your clients?
Sure, sure. So when it comes to structure, we look at two things. Number one, their personal operating system, aka their own calendar,
Hmm.
their own habits, how they approach their work, and secondly, the operations of their own of their business itself. So let's look at the business to begin with. Every single project, every single action that we actually put on to demonstrate their team's calendar must be aligned with a metric.
Hmm.
So we have a three-layer planning system called a goal compass. Layer one, there is the outcome. And I'm not talking about just a big hairy goal. The outcome comes with a constraint. For example, this quarter, I want to generate 100,000 in revenue. But the constraint here is that we're going to protect a profit margin of at least 35%. So we will
Hmm.
not burn money or
Hmm.
create something that's very inefficient. Second layer, metrics. There are qualitative metrics and quantitative metrics. Quantitative metrics are numbers that can only go in one direction. Sales, leads generated, calls booked,
Hmm.
client signed, so forth. Qualitative metrics, though, acts as the quality control to make sure that our project isn't just there for the sake of like just there so that we can do some work. We want to
Hmm.
make sure that every single project provides a favorable return on time invested. So let's look at qualitative metrics. If we were to, let's say, execute this process to generate a ton of leads for our pipeline, what's the goal when it comes to lead to call conversion? What should be the average lead score of these leads that we generate? How much time or how much money are we willing to spend per lead generated? We must have all these defined so that we won't go ahead and just do 10 different marketing strategies, and one of them gives us 10 leads, one gives us 100, and another one gives us two leads for $2,000, which
Hmm.
obviously isn't a good cost per lead. So once we define these metrics, then we look at, okay, with every single project that we have, which one aligns with these metrics the most, and which one will provide the best return on efforts and return on time.
Mm.
We focus on that because the reality is that we don't have 100 problems to solve. The reality is that we have one bottleneck that, when alleviated, will allow the business to take on a new level.
Mm. Okay. Well, going back
Long-winded
to
answer, I know.
yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. I guess it, it takes some time to digest too. I'm sure it makes a big difference when you're actually going through it yourself. Um, most certainly, if I try to sum up simply, is that you can take a tactic and do 10 different tactics to run sales, and you get all these leads. But if you're managing each and every lead that comes in the same way, it's not efficient, right? As far as how you qualify them and whether or not they fit in the box or within the constraint that you've already defined. If you don't do that, you can run through a whole process, work with a client, and then at the end, you might have burned, I don't know, 10, 15 hours trying to win the client, yet to realize that it doesn't meet what you've already defined. Like you said, the total lead limit time and the time, and then basically when you close it, where the profit margin is like, I don't know, 3%. It just doesn't make sense, right? At some point, you got to have a stop loss where you kind of say, okay, this doesn't fit, and move on, right? So I mean, is that correct? I mean, pretty much you need to manage every
Yeah,
single lead differently, yeah. So going back to your
there's
other client, I'm
there's about
okay,
managing.
go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry
there,
about that.
there's about obviously different leads must be managed differently. You've got to recognize like what a lead score is, where they're top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, or middle of the funnel, and so
Mm,
forth. But if we were to, but the principle here is to recognize that what like for every single action that we take, there is an opportunity cost that
yeah.
comes with it. And what we want to avoid here is to invest 100 hours into a project that only moves the needle by a fraction at the expense of us not being able to dedicate the same 100 hours into the project that would move the needle far, far, far more effectively.
Mm. Well, what would you say then for, let's say, someone working pretty much for free on a project because they wanted to use it as a use case that they can showcase that their product or solution had made impact for a business. Yet at the end of the day, they're burning dollars and resources for that potential that may not be there. Like, how would you deal with something like that?
Only invest surplus into it. So what?
Yeah.
So there's always like obviously as innovators, as business owners, nothing is guaranteed. But as a wise man once said, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. So if you're working for free, you better only dedicate the time that you can dedicate. Like you better only dedicate the surplus of time, effort, and capital that
Hmm.
you are willing to lose. But never ever do something experimental at the expense of you taking away the resources for the main thing that is vital.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, that makes sense. Makes sense. So I guess it's almost like you definitely need to manage your opportunity costs every single day, right? Because you either will lose some
Absolutely.
opportunities. In many cases, that you could obviously miss a potential opportunity because you're busy. So in the scenario I just talked about, if I pulled my team to work on this project, and let's say like I'm willing to lose the money, and the project is estimated to be 2 weeks, but then for some reason it runs to 4 weeks. Then if any other opportunities came into play, or even it actually takes the time to do any more lead gen at that point in time to identify new opportunity, I just lost out, right? You just never know. And I can imagine for sure, a lot of entrepreneurs are always FOMO, right? They don't know if the next conversation, where it's coming from, and what opportunity will bring them. How does a entrepreneur then, from the respect of productivity, then think about who they decide to actually spend time with, right? You can't just say, I guess people say, oh, I'm going to take this call. I need to go to a networking event, because I've always got to be selling. I've always got to be like BDing. So how does an entrepreneur then manage their own productivity time? Not only from a personal side, right? They got to manage the work-life balance, but yeah, how do they manage? How do you help entrepreneurs manage that mindset of like meeting people, networking, and looking at opportunities?
Again, it comes back down to time budgeting.
Hmm.
So every single time we help a client build out his or her personal operating system, we start with this one question: how much time do we have for the business versus things outside of the business? Some people can be in a push season where they can dedicate 60 hours per week. Completely fine with that. Other people, they want to dedicate 30. Completely fine with that. There's no right or wrong answer towards how many hours that you want to work. But what we want to make sure of is that we're able to account for those hours. As in, okay, you say you want to engage in networking, let's say, for the example they provided. How much time can we dedicate towards networking and towards just doing something social or experimental?
Hmm.
Because we've got to first budget in the time for the main business. We've got to take care of the team, we've got to take care of the sales, we've got to take care of clients and our marketing and so forth. Okay, after we have budgeted in the hours for all those things, how much time do we have left for networking? Because obviously you do not want to allow networking to replace the time that you want to spend for, let's say, create when it comes to, let's say, working on an important client project, or don't want to go for networking events when you promise your partner that you were going to go for a date night with her. So again, yeah, it comes back down to time budgeting and recognizing how much time that you are willing and have for that thing.
Yeah. I can imagine that's quite hard for some, from even myself. Many times I'm the type of person that always gotta keep busy, mainly because I feel like really as I get older, life is short. And, as much as I love to sleep, I could sleep many hours. I actually like to be doing something. And yeah, I guess to the point of why, what makes what you and I are talking about interesting is I also reflect, am I doing something for the sake of doing something, right? Which is fine, right? This is how I want to spend my time. But also, if I need to look at the areas in my life that when I spend that time, is it productive, right? So I guess in this case, it's if I think about an entrepreneur, if I would ask them, okay, let's say you had a objective or target that you wanted to bring in, on average, 100,000 revenue per month, right? If I had a choice, if you ask an entrepreneur, I'm sure, if you can accomplish this in 20 hours as opposed to 60 hours, what would your choice be? I am pretty sure it's pretty simple, right? They'll say 20 hours, right? If I can make
Exactly.
100K a month and I can accomplish that in 20 hours, that's fine. And some of them might say, well, I'll still work 60 hours a week, but then I'll earn 300K a month, which is perfectly fine too. But I guess to your point, isn't that like the shift in mindset that you then need to figure out and solve? How do I reach that goal in 20 hours and not 60, right? Is that right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And obviously, there's the moving goalpost. You will never get, you will never arrive. Your goals will always increase, and you will never. And if you are someone who likes working all the time, yes, if you were to make 100K per month in 20 hours, you'll probably just push for that 60-hour week and think that you're going to earn 300,000. But we're not aiming for that. and it
Mm.
doesn't work that way, because there is something called diminishing returns. People think that they can just double their work hours and double their revenue, but not every single hour provides the same productive output, especially if you're pushing yourself past red line. So
Mm.
what we want to aim for is not to, let's say, give you a fixed amount of work hours to work on because let's say the right answer is 40 hours per week. No, there is no wrong
Right.
answer. The goal here is to make sure that every single hour that you spend at work gives you the fulfillment, the satisfaction, and the output that you want out of it. And if
Right. Right.
you are redlining yourself to a point where you're working your 50th, 60th, and 70th hour, and you feel like you're just zonked out and just typing away on a computer randomly, that's where you've got to set the intention, hit pause, and recognize that you have to rest, rejuvenate, and do something that is outside the business.
Right. 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 Okay. Well, that makes sense. Well, I think it's a daily task, right? What you're talking about, as far as managing your time. We talked about managing your time and having systems in place and having people around you in which that you can delegate and buy your time back. If you were then like any new entrepreneur coming into space, or let's say first year, trying to work the business, if you give like the top 3 to 5 like things that they should focus on, I mean, as far as like increasing productivity, what would you say they would focus on, because there's so many things to think about as an owner themselves.
Sure.
Yeah.
Especially if you are new to the entrepreneur space, focus on simplicity.
Hmm.
Simplicity scales and complexity fails.
Hmm.
It is super easy for a new entrepreneur to want what other established entrepreneurs have. But if we go ahead and model what a eight-figure business is doing whilst you're just looking to build your first 6 figures, you will get burnt out and you will end up spinning your wheels.
Hmm.
So first thing is to stay simple. First
Okay.
thing is to stay simple. Second, practice clarity at all times and build a structured schedule around exactly what you want to achieve.
Okay.
If we don't have clarity towards who we want to become, what goals we want to actually accomplish, what are the measurements of
Hmm.
progress that we have for our business. If these clarity points are not defined, then we will not be able to invest our time in alignment to what we want to achieve. Will just be a leaf being whirled around the whirlwind of the entrepreneurial space, and will just fall into shiny object syndrome after shiny object syndrome and end up spinning our own wheels.
Hmm.
This is the second point that I want to make. Third and finally, don't focus on the outcome too much. Seriously. That seven-figure business, that eight-figure business, that big team, so forth. Yes, it's good. But if you look at all the entrepreneurs who have achieved it, they don't feel like that's a big deal,
Hmm.
or they don't feel like that's the main source of fulfillment. Enjoy the journey. Do not sacrifice what you are looking to grow in the expense of an outcome that somebody
Hmm.
told you that you should aim for. AKA, do not go ahead and, like, if you're building this for the family that you want to provide for, if you're building this for the life that you want, or if you're building this for the people who you want to serve, do not sacrifice your well-being, do not sacrifice your sanity, do not sacrifice your relationship, because all those things will create so much drag that will weigh you down as an entrepreneur who's
Right.
looking to be high performing at work.
Right.
So
Right.
again, keep your priorities straight and do not sacrifice something that you're not willing to lose.
Right, right. Well, that makes sense. So if I then summarize it, so number one, simplicity. So keep it super simple. The KISS, I guess, methodology. Make sure that you always have clarity and maybe more of the around why you're doing what you're doing. I think a lot of
Yep.
times that's important. And then don't focus too much on the outcome. I guess how fast you get there, or actually many times the outcome that you're striving for will probably look a lot different than what you originally had imagined. But you're saying enjoy the journey, the process in which that you take to get there is actually the path you should cherish the most in the whole bit of entrepreneurship. So those are the three. Is that
Exactly,
correct?
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
and now some of the listeners here might feel like I'm contradicting myself, as in because point two is clarity towards what you want to achieve, and point three is don't really put so much so much stress onto the outcome. Well, there's a
Yeah.
nuance to that because if
Yeah.
you over fixate on the outcome and not look at whether you're enjoying the journey or whether you are protecting your boundaries throughout your pursuit to high achievements, then you'll risk burnouts. You will risk basically going sideways in terms of sacrificing your health, your family, your well being to the point where this lack of fulfillment is causing you to not want the outcome anymore. And that's the
Right.
last thing
Right.
that's the last thing that you want to fall into because that's a whole downward spiral that's so hard to get out of.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, that's for sure. I think once you start impacting your, let's say, if you disrupt your home life, you disrupt your health. Obviously, your focus then becomes very much harder actually to focus on the business, right? Because you've got now compounding issues, not only from the business what you're trying to solve, but you've got more problems that you need to solve. So at the end of the day, then you maybe, like you said, you're all over the place, and then for sure the business will suffer. Okay. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Michael, I want to thank you for your time joining the podcast, and these are very good points. Actually, I've got a lot of great clips to use for shorts and reels that I think we can put out there. You know, and as anything, it's very easy to say, hey, these are the things you should do. Keep it simple, which you can try to do one day, but then you're putting out fires another day. Then all of a sudden it feels complex. And for sure, you know, why don't you tell me a little bit about like how to best contact you if people want to work with you and they want to reclaim their life back, right? They get their time back. What's the best way to reach you?
Sure. So if you are on social media, you can follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search LinkedIn and Facebook, just search Michael Yeung, and you will be able to see a guy called Michael Yeung, who's the founder of Elite Productivity. Follow me on that.
Yeah.
And my handle for Instagram is at real Michael Yeung. So all one word, real Michael Yeung.
Yep.
And if you are not on social media, you hate social media, that's completely fine. Just head to eliteproductivity.io and you'll be able to find out more about my work and we can connect personally.
Okay, great. So what I'll do is I'll put most of the stuff actually in the show notes so everyone will have it. But once again, hey, thank you for your time, Michael. And yeah, I'll probably catch up with you another time. I think it'll be more that we can talk about at a different stage in an entrepreneur's career. Maybe we can talk about people who have built the revenue that they want, and now when they're ready to scale, I think they need to focus more on productivity, right? Because they got to do more. Hey, so that concludes this episode of the Startup Voyage podcast. I would like to thank all of you for listening to this episode, and I'd really appreciate it if you leave any type of comments that you'd like to share, because it helps to feedback on how I deliver these podcasts, and I definitely want to improve it to continue to add more value to the audience. Now, you can follow us on many of the popular podcast channels: Spotify, Amazon, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. Equally, I'm going to be uploading all these episodes onto YouTube. So it's more than just audio, it's video. You can see everyone's faces. Look, I really hope that you enjoyed this episode, and I'm always open to new ideas or looking for new guests. So if you know anyone in the space of Web3 that is an influencer or leader or someone who's really trying to shape what Web3 will be in the future, I'd love to hear from them. All right. So yeah, just comment below. You can DM me. I have all my information in the details underneath this podcast episode. So yeah, thank you for joining me today, and have a great one. See you in the next episode.